He quotes a verse that King Solomon says, Isha sheyitin lo elokim oshev v'nechosim v'kovod. God endows man with wealth, with properties, and with honor, with glory. But yet God doesn't give him the ability to benefit, to have any benefit from all his assets, from his money, from his glory. Now, who's this person? I mean, if God is endowing a person with all the amenities of life, so why doesn't he have it? Why doesn't he take benefit, take advantage of what he has? The answer is because there is something abnormal in the person, that the person is so miserly that he even doesn't want to put what he has in jeopardy, even where he will be the beneficiary. He doesn't understand the value of anything is to live. But he values the asset to such a degree that he doesn't want to diminish it, even at the cost of compromising his own existence. And as much as you try to convince him differently, he will not in any way do anything which will lessen his financial base. He won't do it. He'll live at a minimal level, but in terms of what he has, he will not benefit from it. The question is why? You'd say it's like a demon went into him. This instability has come upon him, but why? The man made all this money. He was rational. All of a sudden now he's become so irrational. The answer is that God causes him to be dysfunctional in this context, because since just as you didn't want anybody else to benefit from you because you were miserly and you protected your assets and your money to the nth degree, and you would not want it to be compromised, God says, if you didn't want your wealth to be compromised, not only will you not compromise it for others, you're not going to compromise it for yourself. So really, it's a curse. This person acquired this mental illness because regarding others, if you would have functioned as you should have to share with others, to help others, and because you were shut down for others, God will shut you down even for yourself. That's the measure for measure. And therefore, King Solomon says, man has wealth, he has assets, he has fame, but yet he has no control of what he owns. He will not benefit from what he owns. And you know what he does? He goes to the grave and leaves everything else for everyone else. And he's not a beneficiary of that. And that's what it's about. And you realize it feeds on itself. People sometimes are paranoid. They're paranoid. You ask them something, they say, I'll tell you a story, unbelievable story. I never experienced anything like this in my life. I took a few days off over a year ago. I went to Florida for a few days, stayed in a certain hotel. I arrived Sunday night, came back on Thursday, and I'm in the hotel, and you see another Jew who seems to be observant. You say, Shalom Aleichem. You say, hello, how are you? Where are you from? What's your name? Innocent questions. Never met the man before. And he's an observant man. And he's sitting there. And I asked him, what's his name? And he gives me some kind of coy type answer. Doesn't give me a straight answer. I said, okay. So I say, where do you come from? Also evades the question. And then I said to him, what do you do? That was the explosion. That was the igniter. Maybe you want to put your hand in my pocket. Maybe you want to know my business. I said, excuse me? I said, you know something? I've met thousands of people in my life. I've never experienced this kind of behavior. You're supposed to be an Orthodox Jew. And he was more than supposed to. What kind of behavior is this? I said, I've never seen such disrespectful, paranoidal behavior in my life. I've never seen it. I said, you know something? It would be a privilege for me not to speak to you. You're kind of person I don't want to have anything to do with a person like yourself. I've never seen it. The man is so paranoid. What he has, if you ask him a question, what size shoe does he wear? Somehow it has to do, you want to know what he paid for the shoes. You understand? Or anything. It all goes back this paranoia that somebody's trying to put his hand in his pocket and victimize him financially. You want to know something? You know what that's called? I don't have any medical degree. I don't know how you classify it in terms of psychiatric speaking. As a psychiatrist, this guy has a condition. He has some kind of psychiatric condition. I don't know what it is, but the man is cursed. And that's what King Solomon says. You have wealth, you have assets, you have renown, you have connections, but you don't even have pity on yourself because you're concerned, you can compromise what you have, but that's a curse. And this man is cursed. A person who's able to give and help others and maximize on what he has, or at least feel somebody else's need or whatever it is, that person's blessed. And the person is for himself. Ultimately, he'll be for himself to such a degree, he'll even compromise himself. I'll give you an example. A person's untrusting in business, and somebody comes and offers him an opportunity, which is one of a kind. But because he trusts no one, he doesn't do the deal. Lady finds out that if he would have done the deal with that person, he'd be endlessly wealthier than he is at this point. So because he was foolish, being untrusting, who did he do? Who did he do himself in? He did himself in. But just as in that situation, the person would berate himself, feeling that he victimized himself, God says you will victimize yourself to the nth degree that at the end you'll be the cursed one because you are cursed. A person who functions that capacity is a cursed person. I don't know much about Howard Hughes, but I know he was an eccentric and he was a genius. He made money like nobody else made money. Used aircraft, whatever he built over there was fortunes. But regarding himself, the way he lived a life towards the latter part of his life, it wasn't as a normal functional person. That's where he lived. Or he had access to unlimited amounts of money. So who would want to change places with him? You could be normal and just have enough to make ends meet, or be that kind of person. Wouldn't change places with him, unrelated to your religion, anything else, just in terms of functionality. You don't need it. He was afraid to touch a doorknob because maybe the germs and who knows what, all the craziness that went along with that. He had like all kinds of paranoia, whatever it was. But that's a curse. Why was he cursed? I don't know why he was cursed. Did he bring it upon himself? Was it a genetic issue? I have no idea what it was. But even where it's not genetic, God deals measure for measure. If you don't feel somebody else's pain, God says even your own needs, you're not going to be sensitive to. And you can do yourself in. The Chofetz Chaim gives a mashal, the allegory, not here, somewhere else he says, a person, he's a miser, and he has to go see the doctor. You have to pay a fee to go see the doctor. He's not going to see the doctor. Why? Because it's costly. And because of that, his condition worsens. Finally, he has no choice. He has to go see the doctor. The doctor goes, the doctor prescribes a certain medication. To make that prescription, it's very expensive. So he feels, something. Although it's enough I paid the fee, I should pay for the medication. He puts it off to the point he doesn't buy the medication. His condition deteriorates. He goes back to the doctor, and the doctor says, did you make the prescription, take the medication? He says, no, it was too costly. He says, something, because you didn't take the medication, now I have to prescribe even a more expensive medication. And not only that, it has side effects. It'll actually compromise you in other areas. But if you want to live, you got to take the more expensive medication. He says, more expensive yet. He says, I have to think about it. Man, the doctors, it's your choice. And ultimately, because he's so miserly, he's so concerned that the cost of what he needs to rehabilitate himself, he passes on it. Eventually, he's beyond the level of recovery. He can't recover any longer. And people do themselves in. You go from bad to worse to a point where the person himself, due to this shortcoming, this disconnect in his brain, so to say, or in his emotion, ultimately he forfeits his life. Identically, a person can forfeit his life in the spiritual world by you have opportunities which are unlimited, and because you continuously compromise them for your own self-interest, which is unacceptable. We're not talking about you have to be a tzaddik, but just be so-called an ethical, moral human being, and even that you're not willing to be. And the more you withdraw, the more you shrivel up in your own little shell. And eventually what happens when you shrivel up? You totally deteriorate, and you just totally shut down. And you become a non-existent person, non-functional person. Now, there's an expression people say in Yiddish. You see a person when he was younger, he had charisma, he had energy, he had personality, and now he's an old man and has dementia and senile, and he barely could walk. And this man used to be a lion. He was a maker, a shaker, and people revered him and envied him. And you say, just look what happens to a person. It's less than a shadow of his past. Less. Just look what's happened to a person. So what is a person's value? When you have the goods, maximize on it. It's not forever. One's personality is not forever, your memory is not forever, your health is not forever. So whenever you're in a position where you can make a difference, take advantage, be smart, make the difference. When you're old already, you don't have the energy, you don't have the attention span, you don't have the patience, you may not have the means any longer. It may be too late. Don't pass on the opportunity. And life, every moment is opportunity, but you have to see it and you have to relate to it and value it. If you don't, it goes from bad to worse. Because as time goes on, that's just the nature of life, things start fading. And when things fade, eventually they fade out totally. That's what it's about. The Chofetz Chaim writes that when it comes to what we're talking about now, Chesed, person says, I'll let my children do it. I'll leave it for my children. It's not for me. I don't have the patience. I don't have the time. Let them do it. And he sets up trusts where he has no access to his money any longer. Chofetz Chaim says you can't make a greater mistake than that. You have the ability to do it yourself. Don't rely on others. Because firstly, even if they do it, they may do it at a time where you need it sooner. But they don't appreciate what you appreciate, and they'll delay. And as a result of that, you're going to be held hanging. And even once you give them the purse strings, even when you need it, they may not release it to you, which we know that's fact. Because your son has to build a house, his wife needs a vacation, and you realize once you give up control of your assets, you become second fiddle. You become secondary. You're not the first priority any longer. Before you write it over, Dad, how you doing? Your daughter calls you 15 times a day. Once you write over those assets, you pick up the phone, they don't even pick up the phone to answer the phone. And that's just the reality of people. You need somebody, they're interested in talking to you, or they want to accommodate you. The moment they don't need you any longer, you become secondary, or even less than that. Therefore, Chofetz Chaim writes, just keep control of your assets, your money. As long as you can do it yourself. Because you can't rely on other people. Unless you have no choice but to rely, to delegate. But even when you delegate, you should have control. You have to be the one to sign that check. Otherwise, you don't sign the check. Unless it's done the way you want it to be done. It has to meet your level of satisfaction. That's what it has to be. Somebody once says to Chofetz Chaim, if he's divinely inspired, one of his students, his primary student, so the Chofetz Chaim said to him, one thing I tell you, I don't know if I'm divinely inspired, but one thing I tell you, I'm not a fool. A fool I'm not. People can't pull the wool over my eyes. Factually speaking, he was divinely inspired, but the Chofetz Chaim was such a practical, down-to-earth person. He understood people so well and the reality that if you wanted something to be done, do it yourself. You have no choice. You have to delegate. You have to go through others. But if you could do it yourself, don't rely on anybody else. And because then you know it'll be done as you want it to be done. Because everybody has their way of seeing it. Everybody has their conflicts of interest. And the more they have to gain, the greater the conflict of interest is to themselves. And that's the reality. And you come to the world to come, they take out a Sefer Torah. And they open up the Sefer Torah. And they say, they point to a mitzvah. And they go from one to that. Did you fulfill this mitzvah? And they come to the mitzvah that a Jew has an obligation to lend his fellow if he's truly in need. And they ask him the question, did you fulfill this mitzvah? And he says, no. So they ask, why? And he gives every excuse under the sun. But you realize in the world of truth, those excuses don't hold water. And the person immediately is condemned for that. And they go from one to the next to the next. And if he answers properly, okay, he gets his just reward. But if he doesn't, he's held accountable. And because this mitzvah is so neglected, lending money, or even helping a fellow, because everybody's busy, I'm too busy, it becomes a problem. Went to South Africa in the early 20s. Well, South Africa had the major part of the community in Johannesburg and those few towns where Jews were Lithuanians. They came from Lithuania. And he was chief rabbi of a major city in Lithuania. It's called Punovich. And in those years, it was a very backward country. Mostly natives, but it was like the Ivory Coast. You were able to amass wealth, which was not to be believed. So when he came back, the Chofetz Chaim says, what did you see? What did you see? And he asked about the population, which was mostly blacks. He says, what I saw was, it was scorching heat, and one black person offered a glass of water to the other. Shared this glass of water with another person to quench his thirst. He says, you know something? It speaks volumes of those positive qualities these people have, that even though they're so uneducated, illiterate, and don't have many experiences in life, but the natural tendency or need to help one another, they have it. That speaks about them, that the quality people. That's what the Chofetz Chaim's response was, what he told me, witnessed in this, how one went and offered his water to the other one, they should be able to drink, that he shouldn't be dehydrated, he shouldn't be parched. Okay? But you say, but what's your value? You could pick cotton on a plantation. That's your value. Or you work in a diamond mine. What's your value? That is the value. When we speak of value, it's the innate qualities of a person. You have those qualities, you're a person of value. Value is not, what you can produce income-wise. That's not what value is. Value is integral to the person's makeup. Who are you? What's your perception? What's your philosophy? What's your predilections of life? What do you want? Where do you want to be? That's value. Okay, we're going to stop here. If there's any comments,